Well, I am so glad that we are together, and I am here with Paul and Jean Biggers. And if you've been with us for the last 20 years, you know exactly who I'm talking to. But if you've been here and new to the last 13 years, then the faces that you're watching right now is maybe new for you. But this is significant for us as one of our markers of 20 years of celebrating what God has been doing for the last 20 years is fantastic. So, Paul and Jean, it is so good to talk with you guys, and what a blessing. Paul and Jean, you were the founders of Summit Ridge Church. We exist as a church because you were faithful to obey God in starting a church in this unknown town called Vegas. So you started that 20 years ago, as you know, as we get started. But I want to find out, like, so when did Summit Ridge start? Tell us. I mean, you're the ones that got that whole started, and so when did that start? This whole thing.
Well, we arrived in Las Vegas on December 23rd, back the U-Haul trailer in the drive, and unloaded it the next day, Christmas Eve. And that Christmas Eve attended a Christmas Eve event at a church that we had been promised would be a location that we could use, which never happened.
That
But
was in 1999, right?
that was 1999.
Back in the 90s.
Yes, and it was right before Y2K was supposed to have everything fall apart.
Of course.
We didn't know if we'd have water, electricity, or what. But we attended that Christmas Eve service, attended New Year's Eve with that same group, and out of that, a young guy in the Air Force became our worship leader through that connection. So we just started meeting people, and the first official, I guess you'd say, collection together would have been Easter of 2000. We met at Lone Mountain Park. We had around 95 people out kind of for an outdoor event. Hey, this is a different kind of Easter, and I'm sure there are people that would come to that would never come to the YMCA where we first kind of started meeting. But that was our first big collection of the groups of people that we were meeting with. Because we got to town, we just started, hey, let's make connections. Talk to anybody that comes across our path.
And you came here to plant a church.
Absolutely. We were targeting the northwest corner, Ann Road and US 95.
And you moved from where?
We moved from northern Indiana, where we had been in churches in two different church settings. Moved to Las Vegas, totally different community. Moved from a very strict Mennonite, small town atmosphere to this large metropolis called Sin City. It was probably the best move that we ever made. One of the best ministries of all of our ministries. We say Las Vegas, Summit Ridge was probably the best one.
Amazing that you guys would move here. I mean, it's a big shift, you know. So get started in 2000. You started meeting at the YMCA when?
We met at the YMCA for the first time on September 10, 2000. So we call that actually the birth date of Summit Ridge.
And that's why, if you know, everybody's going like, well, wait, did you have to start earlier? That's why we say it's September, everybody, as at the YMCA. And that's where because you were there for 7 years almost.
I am not sure there is anyone remaining at Summit Ridge that would have attended the 4 preview events that we did in the summer of 2000 at the Santa Fe Casino. We couldn't get into the YMCA because it was a new opening facility until that week after Labor Day. And so we did 4 previews, had 25 to 35, 40 out during once a month. And then we said September 10, hey, we're launching and we're going. We're trusting God to and the rest is history.
Wow. And how did you decide on Vegas?
Well, that's kind of a long story, but I'll make it as short as I can. We were in northern Indiana. We were in between ministry. We were doing what I call recalibration for next phase ministry. And I went up to Illinois to a Sun Life conference for growing a healthy church. Happened to sit across the table one night with Ed Mitchell, who was with what's now Southwest Church Connection. And Ed says, I understand you're thinking possibly about church planting. What would you think about coming to Las Vegas and planting a church? Big laugh. Why would I ever think about going to Las Vegas, even on vacation? I mean, it just was never on my radar at all.
Well, we were thinking Indianapolis. That's what we were thinking.
So Ed says, can I have Bob Lehman get in touch with you? Bob's our church planning coach for the Southwest. I said, sure, and didn't expect Bob to ever get in touch. And the next week he called. I just texted Bob this past week and says, hey, Bob, you're one of the most special friends in my life, 22 years, thanks. And Bob started the process, asked us to come out to Las Vegas and Phoenix, survey. And I got to tell you the other part of the story, how it was Las Vegas. I'm sitting in our house listening to Moody. It's the first night of Founders Week that spring. Joel Stoll is speaking. And as president of Moody, he was speaking on the prodigal son. But the focus was on the brother that did not join the party and stood out aloof. And it was like Joe talked to me, hey, why don't you go to Las Vegas, step up on the porch and join the party? And it was like God did a real thing in my heart that night. And I remember sitting on the stool there at our counter, and I tapped my knee, and Gene came through, and I said, sit down here. I could hardly talk because usually I don't make a real emotional decision, but it was like God had used that to confirm, hey, we're going to Las Vegas, not Phoenix.
Wow. Our feelings as well when we heard of Las Vegas. When I heard about it as my mentor, pastor out of Phoenix Seminary, said, I know a great church for you that I think you'd fit beautifully in. And I'm like, that sounds great. And it was Angela who said, so where is it? Because I was ready to go. And he said, Vegas. And my immediate question was, Las Vegas, Nevada? And
New Mexico.
That would have been fine. And I thought, I don't even want a vacation in Vegas. And so my immediate question was, do you know of any other churches that might be a great fit for us? And he just laughed. And 9 months later, we moved here to Las Vegas.
Sure.
So real similar.
And John, I can look back and see how God prepared you and Angela for that whole process, just as much as he did for Gene and me to take that big step of risk, kind of like, hey, we're doing something out of the box. We don't really know what we're doing, but hey, we're trusting God. We believe if we tell his story to enough people and love people and collect them together, that hopefully maybe we can get something started that will last. And here, 20 years later, God's still working.
That's right. And so there's been so many people that have been a part of Summit Ridge over the 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have about 6 or 7 people or family groups that are still with us prior to me coming. But God has been so faithful, so good, so faithful. There were years of hard tightening the belt of, I remember being at the Y, and our accountant would come up and say, I'm not sure we're going to be able to pay you today. It really depends on the giving. And it's always before the message too, by the way. And there's no pressure. God always provided. Every single week, God provided for every one of their needs. You guys were here for, 7 years or so here in Vegas, and persevered through hard days of getting the church started, of all of the unknowns, of all of those things that happened to engage in ministry. How did you see God's faithfulness over the years?
Well, one thing that we never had to struggle with was finances because of our financial support partners. And God gave us an amazing team that he put together to just financially support us. So that was not a concern that we had to deal with. We knew we had the finances to be there. And so that was just an incredible thing that God did and still is doing for us as we continue part-time for him. So those are people that there would have never been Summit Ridge without those people believing in us and sending us to do something out of the box.
It's remarkable how God stirs in people to give. I mean, that is a significant piece that you give towards the ministry and of whatever ministry God's laying on your heart, and you give towards that. It makes a huge difference to allow people to engage in people's lives. You guys are still one of the number one couples that I always, whenever I talk with you and whenever I get your newsletter, I always hear about, oh, we've been meeting with so-and-so and so-and-so and sharing Christ with so-and-so. You love Jesus and you love telling people about Jesus. And it's such a beautiful example for me and for those who have known you for the decades of ministry. You guys are still in ministry. And so what do you do now?
You know, we joined Mission Store on the 16th of March, 99. That summer, we started telling our dream. We're going to Las Vegas with God's help and enablement because we can't do it. And with yours, we want to plant a church. And so church planting has always been in my heart. And when God raised up that team, it helped us there. And then when we left Las Vegas, we've still continued involved in the church planting arena, helping in, 6 or 7 churches at least, and currently are in a church plant environment again. The beginning of 2019, we went part-time, which means 20 to 25 hours a week now. And we still have approximately 50 support partners that many of them have given from month 1 back in 1999. Very faithful. And so I spend a lot of my time one-on-one. In fact, I'll be meeting with our FCA director for the 2 counties here, 5 staff people that I met with yesterday with him, and meet once a week with him for mentoring and help. And then I'll meet with Pastor Andy this afternoon about Christ Church Windsor that we're part of now. Counsel, come alongside, hide in the background, try not to be conspicuous, but just help make Andy successful.
Beautiful.
And any way we can to touch the unbelieving lives that God brings around us.
And you're helping train his elders now.
Right.
Beautiful.
So I keep busy. between them and the grandkids, between the work with the work here, and it's just a delightful season in our lives.
Amen. Amen. Guys, thank you so much for being obedient to follow the Lord's leading and doing that. And we are grateful. And I'm grateful for how the Lord stirred and moved and what he is doing and what he will continue to do to make himself known, and that we get to glorify him and be satisfied in him. What a privilege we have. And so thank you so much. It's just a privilege to be able to talk with you and for us to hear your story, guys. So thank you.